Welcome back. Another, and this is not a specific question that I have gotten. This is more I've gotten several questions along this line, so this seemed like a good topic. And the topic is I get a lot of comments on YouTube or folks that send me messages through YouTube or folks that have found me on Facebook, which folks have done, which if I haven't mentioned it, I know I've mentioned it before. If you haven't seen one of the videos, there are a few Facebook groups. Prime Tanker Yankers, probably the one I'm most active in. Prime Time Grinders, I think. Prime Drivers, Past, Present, and Future. Prime Ink Driver. There's a bunch of groups. I'm in a couple of them, at any rate. Like I said, primarily in the Prime Tanker Yankers group is where I do a lot of my contributions. And it's a great group if you're thinking about coming to Prime and working in the tanker division, or if you're a reefer driver or flatbed driver and looking at switching divisions. A lot of tanker drivers in there. There's spouses are in there. My wife is involved and asks questions on my behalf if I'm driving. Guys ask questions about technical things. You know, hey, I'm having a problem with my tank heater. I'm having this. I go into this customer. Can guys tell me about this customer, that customer? It's a great resource. Check it out. At any rate, the point of the video, I have gotten a lot of this type question. And the premise of the question usually starts off, my recruiter told me. And then there's the question. And I guess I just wanted to address that topic. And it's somewhat about recruiters. It's somewhat about the information. It's a lot of it is focused on the hiring area. But I'm going to start with, I want to talk about recruiters. First of all, guys, you have to understand that recruiters are paid to get you to show up. You may believe that, you may not believe that. But they get paid when you show up to Springfield or to Salt Lake City or to Pittston. That's how they get paid. They are not salaried employees. A lot of Prime is not salaried, in fact. Most of Prime's employees have some sort of incentive-based compensation. So a recruiter is going to get paid based on the number of people that show up. So if you show up because you've talked to a recruiter, that recruiter is going to get a certain amount of money. And don't ask me, I don't know how much money they make based on how many people they get to show up. I do know that they are incredibly busy. So again, I'll go back to, and the typical number that you get is there's 100 people that show up to orientation every Monday. New drivers for the most part, whether it's new student drivers, rehires, guys who've worked at Prime coming back, people who are switching over and joining Prime from other companies, people who have come in from outside training programs. Typical number is about 100. What you have to understand is that for every 100 people that show up, there's at least 1,000 applications, maybe 2,000, 3,000 applications that the recruiters have gone through to get to the 100 people who show up for that Monday. So I get a lot of, my recruiter isn't returning my phone call, my recruiter isn't returning my email. They're very busy. They would love to get back to you. I know that. I've talked to several recruiters. They are great people. So cut them some slack. Understand that they are dealing with lots and lots of people. So I want to start off with that. The second thing is, for the most part, and there are a few exceptions, they're not going to tell you something that is not accurate. The primary thing that I get asked is, or told, is I was told I can't hire into the tanker division because I live in this area. And that's kind of the crux of why I decided to do this particular video. I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people will say, I live in California. The recruiters told me I can't be in the tanker division because I live in California. Is that true? If you really want to be in the tanker division, and the recruiter gets paid based on you showing up in Springfield or Salt Lake City or Pittston, do you think it's in the best interest of the recruiter to tell you, no, you can't go into the tanker division? Because then you're going to say, well, then I don't want to go to Prime. That doesn't help their bottom line. It doesn't help that person's pocketbook. So for the most part, and there are a couple of exceptions that I have experienced, they know what they're talking about. And I say that for the most part. I have had an experience, and like I said, if you haven't watched my videos a lot, I live 15 minutes from where I do my dedicated account. I go home basically every night. I had a neighbor of me, literally the person who lived next door to me, be told he was not eligible to do the dedicated account. Now, that was simply a small bit of misinformation that one particular recruiter didn't have the correct information on. But by and large, if you call a recruiter and you are told you do not live within the hiring area, you will not be able to work in the tanker division. Now, there is a video that I have done, I'll throw it in the description here, about where Prime goes. Again, it's 95% east of the Mississippi River. Now, just because you live east of the Mississippi River doesn't necessarily mean that you would be a great fit in the tanker division. If you live in Florida, for example, we don't go to Florida very often. Louisiana, we do go to a couple of places I know of in Louisiana, and we do go to Florida. But we don't go to Louisiana very often. And the issue is, when you want to go home, and I know a lot of guys say, oh, I'm not going to want to go home. I'm only going to want to go home every 3 months, every 6 months. I'm only going to want to go home once a year. It's easy to say that when you're applying to a company. And then once you get into the company, say, well, I changed my mind. I'd like to go home every 6 weeks, every 5 weeks, every 4 weeks. And then when your fleet manager or the head of the tanker division says, well, we don't have any freight that goes. We've got one load a month that goes to Florida. And you're not in the right place at the right time to get that load because it loads out of New Jersey and you happen to be in Chicago when that load loads. Sorry, you're not going to be able to get home for another month. Is that fair to you? Not really. And you're going to be upset with Prime because you want to go home. If you live in California, same thing. We do have freight that goes to California, but there's not a lot of it. You talk to some over-the-road drivers, they might not have been to California in a year, 2 years, because we just don't go out to California very often. And if you are the one who needs that load going to California, by the way, the loads that go to California pay fairly well. If you're the one who needs that load once a month, once every 6 weeks, is that fair to the other drivers? Consequently, just to address California real quick, once you get out there, you may sit for 2, 3, 4 days waiting for something available to come back east to where the rest of the freight is. So, not an ideal situation. If you're going home, you may say, well, big deal, I'll just sit at the house. But if you live in Southern California and the load delivers to San Francisco, and then you reload in, say, Lodi, California, or Arbuckle, California, which are two places I know that we do load in California, you're not going to all of a sudden run down to Los Angeles and then deadhead all the way back up to Lodi or Arbuckle to pick up that next load. So, bottom line being, if a recruiter says something to you, and hiring area is really the big one that I get a lot of questions about. There are other things. If they say something about the physical, is this true about the sleep study? Is this true about, the blood pressure requirements? Like I said, the recruiter's job is to get you to show up. That's how they make their money. They're not going to make something up randomly to say, well, I don't want this guy to show up because I don't want to make money. 99.9% of the time, if they tell you something, it is the truth. And the hiring area that has been decided upon, they don't just arbitrarily pick, well, this guy's in the hiring area and this guy's not in the hiring area. The head of the tanker division has outlined the hiring area for Prime's tanker division. So it's not like you can say, well, I'm not in it, but can you go ask somebody else if I'll fit? The head of the division is the one who has made up the boundary for the hiring area. So I apologize if this video comes across a little bit preachy, but the bottom line is the recruiters know what they're talking about. And if they tell you you are not in the hiring area, there is a very good reason for that. You are not going to be a happy camper when you get to Prime and you start driving and you can't get home, or it is extremely difficult to get you home. So that's what this is about. The recruiter told me. It's a good reason that the recruiter told you what they told you. Thanks so much for watching this week. We'll talk to you again next week. Again, if you do want to come to Prime, if the recruiter told you you're good to go, or if you need to talk to a recruiter, you can click on the link in the description. It'll take you right to the application. Fill that out and see if you can come to Prime. See if you want to come to Prime. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again next week.